So how is everyone? Good.
Very sleepy.
Asleep.
Let's see. Cool, we still have some people coming in. So I just on the discussion text channel, whatever it is, I just posted 3 documents there. One is so it's blank Tentpole beats, and I did one in Word and then one in PDF if you don't have Word. And then there's also the Inception Tentpole beats, which we are going to take a look at and go through. Adam, have you already done like a lovely little intro about what we're going to do?
Yeah, generally. I mean, it wasn't lovely, but it was cruel but fair. Yeah, I'm explaining to somebody how to access this feature.
Let's see. So yeah, since this is like a workshop, we're hoping that it'll be more, question and answer, informal, and we can help everyone get on track for these Tentpole documents, because we're working on adding some videos. We're gonna shoot them all tomorrow, so we're gonna do that. But we wanted to make sure that you all had all the information earlier. Yeah. You want to take it, Adam?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to be really annoying and just do a recap of the Tentpole document. Just sort of go over the fundamentals, just sort of define them the way I think of them. And I'm going to screen share. All right. Does everybody see my screen? You see it one of these bubbles?
Yeah. Yep, that's good.
All right. Everybody sees it?
Yeah.
All right. So this is the beat sheet I made for Inception, which is, interesting enough, an extremely straightforward movie that does everything by the book. I know a lot of people, young men in particular, think it's the most complicated movie in the world, but it's actually very straightforward from a storytelling point of view. So in Act 1, the components that they establish are the protagonist, who is an accomplished dream thief who misses his children. And his flaw is that he's haunted with guilt, although they don't quite explain it, but we know that he's feels guilt that he can't be with his family for something vague he did in his past. We understand that later on. We understand that it's related to his wife, but we get more details of that going on. But we definitely know that this guy is stuck emotionally based on that event. And his inner need is to to let go of his guilt for what he did to his wife and to live in the real world. Like his dad said to him, "Live in the real world, Cobb." Cobb's normal world is that he lives from job to job as a dream thief in Europe, and he can never go home because of his murder charges. The inciting incident of the story, well, we'll take questions after. The inciting incident of the story is when Saito offers him the job of carrying out Inception on a business rival, Robert Fisher. Cobb succeeds, Saito will get the Cobb's charges dropped, and he'll be able to see his children. So this inciting incident destroys his normal world, technically, by giving him an opportunity to get what he really wants, his children back. His normal world is that he's living job to job. This is one big job. Technically, an objective is the manifestation of what they're going to do to get what they want. So I know that seems a little confusing, but like, let's just say there's an imaginary let's just say there's imaginary beat motivation for him to get back to his children.
That's not imaginary. That's what you're gonna add.
Well, I know. I'm just sort of for the sake of illustration. I just don't want to clutter up this document too much. But
I was just giving you a hard time. Sorry, getting you off
please
your
do. I want a challenge. So, for all intents and purposes, the objective is the means, the physical, achievable, tangible means for him to get what he wants. Really, and We established that the antagonist is Mal, the mental projection of Cobb's dead wife. And the Act 1 break. The Act 1 break is the moment there's no going back, and they're going for it. He accepts the job with Saito, and they're getting the team together. It's the scene with Michael Caine where Michael Caine says, "Stop living in a dream world," and that he's got somebody better than he used to be, who is Ellen Page. So all of the things we've established in Act 1 of this movie, we establish who this guy is, what his flaw is, what he needs in life to move on, what his normal world is, what the inciting incident that disrupts his normal world is, that sets him on a path with a goal that will fuel him through Act 2. And I personally think that the best Act 1s all introduce a strong antagonistic force. And the best Act 1s always end with the protagonist actively making a choice that there's no going back from. And in Act 2, there's a lot of opportunities generally for introducing mentors and allies and enemies. Allies and enemies.
My B.
These
You
are
caught
the
me.
people.
No, wait, this
What was that?
never mind. I said, oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Did I put that in? All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
All of the people. I forget all their names. All of the people that are on the
The dream team.
the dream team, the gang, the crew they're putting together with Ellen Page, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Tom Hardy, all of these characters who are going to help them and possibly hinder them on the journey. They're sort of getting together in Act 2. And most importantly, this is tied to the new world. The new world is the world of this job, the biggest job of his career, where he's going to risk everything. The stakes are higher than normal jobs because this is an impossible task. Achieving Inception is supposed to be impossible. This isn't just a normal espionage mission where they steal information or protect some rich kid's subconscious from other dream thieves. This is like, oh, we're doing something big here. And Act 2 is a huge collection of progressively accelerating obstacles. And the first half of Inception's Act 2 is them preparing for the job and the potential obstacles that get in the way. They have that whole little mini adventure in Mombasa where his old employers are trying to hunt him down. He's trying to get a stronger sedative so they can go deeper in the dream because they know that they're more likely to succeed if they go deeper in the dream. Ellen Page is realizing, oh my God, this guy Cobb is crazy and psychotic. He's holding his ex-wife's memories in like miniature prisons in his head. She's gonna break loose at any moment. That's definitely an obstacle. But by the time they step on the airplane and start the job, we reach the first huge turning point in the movie, the midpoint, which is a series of events or event that change everything and make the stakes way more intense, but while retaining the objective. So the moment they start the job, a train hurtles through Cobb's subconscious into Robert Fisher's subconscious. We find out that the sedative is too strong. So if they get shot in this world, their brains will get stuck in the dream. They're going to be scrambled eggs, or their brains are going to be scrambled eggs. Bad stuff. Usually, and that changes the rule of, oh my God, if you get shot in a dream, you wake up. Here, oh my God, if you get shot in a dream, you're going to not wake up. That's bad. And not only that, all of Robert Fisher's subconscious have been trained. That they didn't know that before. All of these people have like briefcases with machine guns in them, and they're being shot at. They not only don't have as much time as they thought, it's more dangerous than they thought. And the one guy who can get Cobb his objective, who can make the phone call to change his life, gets shot. So he only has a few hours. Saito, the boss of the whole thing, only has a few hours before he's going to die and get caught in the dream. You could see how everything is intensified by the halfway point of this movie. The midpoint is where Act 2 twists itself and the stakes get higher. It gets more intense. Now, this is for an action heist movie. There are a lot of external events, but even if this was like a quiet drama, The midpoint is the moment where things complicate in an unexpected way. It's not so much like, oh, I want to have explosions or people are more likely to die. It's not just about external bad things that happen. It's about the nature of what we thought was happening changes a little bit. And I would argue it almost always makes for a better movie. Strong midpoints are so often overlooked by screenwriters. And that's why I railed on that for a while. Anyway, the second hack of Act 2 is actually them doing the job. It's a series of progressively intense obstacles that are really, really well done. I think this is actually the strength of the movie, is how well they really accelerated the second half of Act 2. This is the part that was in all the movie trailers. I would argue that Act 2 is the moment that's the good stuff that you see in movie trailers. It's the reason people want to see the movie. It's the dream heist, shenanigans. It's them trying to get Robert Fisher on their side by like tricking him into thinking that they're parts of his subconscious. It's the them going multiple levels into the dream, trying to synchronize the kicks. It's just great obstacles that are really exciting and well done, all with these newly established stakes from the midpoint. But by the time they're about to get to the job, by the time they're about to, they're at the safe with Robert Fisher's, subconscious is on the side. They know that they're so close. They're deep enough to plant the idea. They're at the safe. Oh my God, Cobb's ex-wife, Ma, or her subconscious manifestation, she's raising a gun to Fisher. Cobb has a gun on her, and he hesitates for a moment. This is his ultimate test, where he fails. Ellen Page says to him, "She's not real." And Cobb says to her, "How do you know that?" And this is a moment where his guilt is actually kind of pulling him in, and he fails to pull the trigger decisively, and Robert Fisher gets shot. Their objective is foiled. Tom Hardy says, "Well, that's it then, is it?" So they're all fucked, sorry, it's a great word. But the great thing about this is they fail because Cobb makes the wrong choice because of his flaw. It's all integrated together. That's why that moment works. It's not just sort of an arbitrary, it's not just like an obstacle that was too hard. No, it's the protagonist made the wrong choice. And now we transition into the all is lost moment in Act 3. Now, the all is lost moment here is obviously Saito dies and he gets sucked into limbo. It seems absolutely impossible for Cobb to ever succeed with the job, and for them to get their, the situation goes from can they succeed to could this get any worse? And I think that's a great way to think of it. And they transition out of it by sort of Cobb having sort of a mental sort of realization of like, well, I need to move on from my wife. And the all or nothing moment is the moment they decide to jump into limbo to rescue Robert Fisher from Ma. It's sort of the moment where they pick themselves back up and like, okay, let's go where we didn't even think it would be possible to go, that unconstructed dream space they talked about earlier, that like your brain's going to turn into scrambled egg if you go. It's like, well, we're going. We got nothing left to lose anyway. I'm going. I'm going to take the risk. And as they confront, and when in the dream space, Cobb confronts Ma, and she sort of makes a deal with him. She's sort of like, you can stay here with me forever with our real children, and I'll let you have Robert Fisher. He says, yeah, okay, I'll stay with you. And Ellen Page is like, what do you mean? He's like, don't worry, take him. Anyway, Ellen Page goes, she gets Robert Fisher, and Leonardo DiCaprio, Cobb, says, don't worry, she's just a shade. She's not my real wife. So the catastrophic in this moment, this is not the best final fight I've heard in the world, but it's functional. It goes from the catastrophic failure of, oh my God, is Cobb making the wrong choice? She's got, he's never going to leave here. Is he making the bad decision? To decisive action of, she's just a shade. You're not my real life. I need to go back to my real children. He makes the decision to let her go. And that leads to the catastrophic success of they get Robert Fisher now. Robert Fisher moves on to make peace with his father, and Inception works. Their objective is actually unexpectedly finally achieved. All the kicks synchronize correctly. Cobb rescues Saito from unconstructed dream space, and they get to the resolution, which is them all on the plane together. Saito looks at Cobb and like, oh, I'll make the phone call. He gets to the airport. He walks through customs unharmed. He finally reaches his children. And we get that ambiguous ending where he rolls the top and we focus, oh my God, is he dreaming or not? Which I personally think was bullshit, but that's just my opinion. I just went through an example just to sort of like start this conversation and be like, hey, this is how one movie did it. And this is this is the traditional form. This is, this is what we're trying to communicate with these Tentpole documents. It's, I think, probably the best way to get a traditional narrative across in an hour and a half, 2 hour movie. Lexi, did I miss anything? Did I misrepresent Inception?
Totally misrepresented Inception. No, you did great. You did great.
Oh yeah, okay. So from that point, I just want to like open it up to.
Well, actually, real quick.
Oh yeah, Alexi, go.
Yeah. So real quick, I kind of wanted to talk about why we shifted to making this the focus of what you're creating in writing the feature, and the way that we hope that you approach Beat Sheet. So basically, I've tried to explain this a couple times in email, but I don't know if it is super clear. But basically, the writing process is just super intangible. It's incredibly hard to oops, there we go. It's incredibly hard to show people how to do the brainstorming and the creative part that goes behind any story. And so what we were hoping to do was use the beat sheet as sort of a way to make it more tangible, and as a way to have something that you're constantly adding to and putting on the page and working on and reshaping. And we realized that because of the nature of the document, it felt like it was sort of causing a lot of people to hesitate because it felt rigid. So it didn't really feel like a brainstorming document. It felt like people needed to know what these beats are at all times and before they could move on. And that's not what we wanted it to be. So we decided to add in this Tentpole document, which is really just the elements of story. We added this in so that this is really your, like, the core of your story. And we do that to emphasize the fact that the beat sheet is, it's about figuring out what these beats are, and it's about figuring out the causality that's there. And it's really just about helping you figure it out, and that the beat sheet should be super fluid.
Right. Just to build off that, yeah, I totally agree. I think, the way I approach these things, if you don't have the spine of your story right, if you don't have the big beats, if they don't work, the document's going to get clogged up and fall apart halfway through. That's when you have second act problems, when you don't have your third act figured out. That's what, you need to make sure that the core line of the protagonist's journey works. And that's what this document, without really getting down into the details of what the scenes are and the obstacles and what all every moment is. Those things don't really matter if you don't have a solid foundation, if you don't know where the core movement is going. So that's what this is all about. Figuring out, and like Alexi said, having it be flexible. When you have a 15-page outline, it can be hard to see the problems and then to make changes that are fundamental. With a 2-page document, it's easier to sort of be that doesn't quite feel right. Let me completely change that midpoint. And how does it change the other things? It's really hard for especially beginner writers to throw out pages they've worked hard to write on. And all of this process is about you not having to throw away 30 pages of scenes that you worked really hard after realizing, oh my God, structurally this doesn't work and I have to redo it. Mm-hmm. do it before. Figure out the mistakes before you start writing. This is why carding is so important. It's why it's why this sort of fluid element of story processing is important. This is why I do snowballing, that exercise where I write the story from memory. It's because I need to know that it's like the best possible version. And I want to be fluid. I want to be fine with throwing out all of my second act ideas if I suddenly get a better one. And being open to saying, no, that's not better.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too is that since it's so simplified down, these tentpole documents look really easy. And they are really, really not. Like, this is the core of your story. This is probably the hardest part of the entire writing process, is locking down what these beats are. So if you're finding yourself like frustrated because your beats aren't quite working, just know that that's what's supposed to be happening at this point. This is the hardest part. And it's going to make writing it just more fun down the road. Let's see. I think that was most things I wanted to talk about. Oh, Adam, you wanted to talk about the final. So we've also gotten a couple questions about the order of stuff presented in this document and if it needs to stay in this order.
Yes.
And
can I talk about that?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. So there are some things. So this document, this isn't like a set of arbitrary rules. It's a descriptive understanding it's a descriptive analysis of what works. And what that means is there's an organic structure to stories. Like, for example, inciting incidents makes sense because, well, story has to start somehow. Once upon a time, once upon a time, there was a bump, and one day something happened to them. Like that's organic into story. Like a lot of these elements, having a first act be the beginning that sets things up, the second act that complicates everything, and the third act that resolves everything. There's a organic like logic and flow to these things. It's not just sort of some random thing some Hollywood hack can't put together. There are documents like that, but that we really tried to like get this down to the bare bones of like, okay, what is the stuff that matters? And I would say the things that are rock solid that you really, really, I would advise not messing with: establishing your protagonist, the flaw, and interneed in Act 1. Having the inciting incident happen about 15 pages in your story, maybe 20. Ending Act 1 with a big decision the character takes on, so they're active. The midpoint of your story, complicating things and changing the audience's understanding of what's happening. The ultimate test, the second act break, where the protagonist either gets their objective or they don't. Obviously, establishing an objective at the end of Act 1. That's really important. And having an all is lost moment, followed by an all or nothing, followed by a final fight, and then the resolution. The third act, I think, is it's kind of, you can't really change those things around. The things you can change around is where you introduce a mentor, where you introduce the allies and enemies, what are the audience's understanding of these sort of things. Like once you have like the core, there's so much else you can do.
Yeah, so I do agree with what Adam was saying. Oh, look, we got more people. There we go. Okay, I think it did
Fantastic.
Work. Okay. They just don't want too many people looking at us. Yes, I think that like the answer to is it have to stay in this order is kinda. The biggest things that you're going to find moving around is that, like, for example, the friends and enemies beat. That's usually not one beat. You usually don't meet all the friends and enemies in one place.
Yes.
The things about like antagonist and mentor, those sort of get moved around. But like you can introduce the antagonist in the first act if you want. You can introduce the mentor in the second if you want. Things like that. Let's see. But then to some degree, there's just like a natural progression that you can't really, that just for a protagonist driven story, you can't really move out of place. Beyond just like the logical things, like where, you know, when you go into the second act, that's when the new world starts. That's just kind of, you know, that's directly because of the inciting incident. So that can't really move. Let's see. Oh, Adam, did you want to talk about the final fight?
Oh yeah. So, sorry.
Got
I love the final
excited.
fight. Yeah. Okay, so the final fight is, you know, there are lots of movies that don't do our specific interpretation of the final fight. There are some final fights that are literally just sort of like a, you know, like a protagonist shows up and they say, I have the answer. And then the answer's right. You know, like there are lots of movies like that. This version of the final fight, I believe, is the one that really works in those great endings as opposed to good endings. This is like, you know, the end of Toy Story, the end of like you know, I just watched Bridget Jones' Diaries the other day, and like movies that like leave you on like a high, being like, oh my god, that was exciting. The stakes were so high. The specific combination of the protagonist shows up for the final fight. They have a failure. Oh my god. They have to make a choice because of their inner need. And that's what transforms the failure into success. I just feel like it's an interesting form that really, really, really works well. It is not the only way to do it. I've seen a lot of films, like I said, that, you know, the protagonist just shows up for a confrontation and then they win. And there was never really any catastrophic failure or decisive action other than they showed up and did the thing. You know, like I said, you know, this is what I think is a descriptive form that works really well. You could, of course, you know, tell a story anyway. There are lots of ways to tell stories. I just think in the hour and a half to 2 hours of a feature film, this works really well, you know, and we recommend it. And I think if you're writing your first screenplay, why not try something that's worked really well? Try a form that's kind of evergreen.
Yeah.
Some elements more negotiable than others, like Alexi said.
So something that I think is worth talking about with this document is that it works for anti-heroes and it also works for tragedies. And I wanted to briefly explain what that is. So an anti-hero, you know, it's sort of, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's sort of loosely defined as like a character who does not change or gets worse over the course of the story. A protagonist who doesn't change or
for anti-hero?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that. And a tragedy is a reverse hero's journey where the character was good and becomes, you know, like I think The Godfather is a tragedy.
Yeah.
You have Michael Corleone, you know, he's the upstanding war citizen who would never lie to his, not war citizen, war hero. God, he's the upstanding war hero who would never lie to his wife. He says to her at the party, that's my family, Kay, that's not me. And we go from that moment to the last shot of the movie, which is, sorry, spoilers, he becomes the Godfather. It's great. And he's everything, he is like his family. He goes from being a war hero to a criminal mastermind in the span of one story. That's a tragedy. You see, you know, somebody change for the worse. But functionally, the only difference is you swap out the flaw and inner need.
Right. So it's like, so for that to write a tragedy or to write an anti-hero, you can use this exact same format and think of all the beats in the exact same way, but your dramatic flaw is something positive. So instead of it being like that his flaw is that what is Michael's and The Godfather? It's that he like prioritizes
family over honesty and being a good man or whatever. I haven't seen it in a while, but it's good.
Yeah, it's something in there. That's his, for the sake of the story, that's his dramatic flaw. And then his inner need is to be, you know, the Godfather, is to be in this,
to choose his family over honesty and being a good man.
Yeah. And so then everything else, all the way that the other beats work together, is exactly the same. It's just that the flaw was a positive and the inner need was kind of, what we would consider to be a negative.
Right. And just to sort of interrupt here. So Kaylin just posted, if anybody has any questions, put it in the featured discussion page, and we can talk about it. So just type out your questions there if you have any. Alexi, what were you saying?
That was it, I think. The last thing I want to say is that this approach to story is that we do in the course, and that John teaches, that we sort of, that we believe in, I guess, is super protagonist centric. Like, everything is about the protagonist's action and how they're driving the story forward. That doesn't mean that there can't be other characters and that they can't have like a band of friends that they're going on this journey with, or doing a heist, or, it worked for Inception. But at the core of the story, it's extremely protagonist driven. And the Tentpole document is really designed to hone in on what the protagonist is doing and how things affect the protagonist at every step of the way. That was my last little thought. Let's see the questions.
Sorry, I just answered one in the chat, and it was, can you snowball Tentpole documents? 100%. I mean, when I have a notion for a story, the first thing I really do when I want to expand it out from my vague notes to, okay, let's try and get something, is I go through the elements of story and I make a list of it, which is basically a tentpole, and I'd be like, okay, what's the normal world? Who's the protagonist? What's their objective? What's the inciting incident? And then I do some creative, I go through it. You can conceivably go through it multiple times. At the end of the day, this is not like I know we're having you guys submit them to us for feedback. But I think it's really important to remember these are tools for you to create stories. They're not like an end goal in of themselves. At the end of the day, the script is the end goal. This is a tool to get to the script. Don't labor over these for long. Like, you could have 15 versions of one. It's just a way for you to make mistakes and come up with solutions to those mistakes before you get drafting. It's to save you time. I would even be as dramatic as saying, if you were just doing a discovery writing draft where you're like, I'm going to just write with no outline, with one idea, and then you took that same idea and you went through this process, you're saving yourself like 6 to 7 extra drafts. Yeah, it's a pain in the butt to do now, but you're saving yourself a lot of time. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have a script. You'll be like, the midpoint doesn't really work, does it? I've got to rewrite the whole thing to get to there. It's about saving you time.
Yes, agreed. Let's see.
Do you guys like Dan Harmon's Story Circle? Oh yeah, 100%. First of all, I'm a huge fan of Dan Harmon. I love Rick and Morty and Community. Great stuff. I really recommend reading about his Story Circle theory. At the end of the day, it's exactly the same form of what we're doing. It's just a hero's journey with different names. Yeah, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah, the only difference that I actually hadn't seen it before, but the only difference is that he specifies that at the midpoint, you get they get what they wanted.
Yeah, different. That's different.
That's the main different part.
Well, but here's the thing. That's for television. And television if for a half-hour television, which is Community and Rick and Morty, that you're in 2 acts. Half-hour television is a 2-act story. And the difference between 2 acts and 3 acts, or at least for the difference between a half-hour's comedy special and an hour drama is, you sort of compress Act 2 and Act 1 into the first half, and then you make Act 3 the second half.
Yeah. Something I meant to say.
So the ultimate test happens halfway through Dan Harmon's Story Circle.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It's the same thing, though. It's just a different organization to work for 30-minute television.
Yeah. Let's see.
And it works really well.
It does.
When people have different. Also, another difference for television is that the end beat of television is different than the end beats of film, because the fundamental goal is different. A film is designed to leave you on a high, an emotional high. Like, wow, the world changed and they overcame all these things. A television episode is designed to make you want to watch another episode and sit there and stay hooked. So the way they change this is that the way they achieve this is that they lower the stakes. It's not life and death all the time. You know, it can be life and death throughout a season. There can be moments like in an episode of Breaking Bad or something, but fundamentally the characters don't change episode to episode. They lower they sort of drip feed out the drama as make it a slow burn, as opposed to making it a 2-hour dynamic experience where a character fundamentally changes. So the last act of a television script, you have a character return back to their old world, having not changed. And in a film script, they've changed, and it's the end of the story. Because if Dr. Gregory House suddenly one episode decided to become a wonderful, caring guy, you wouldn't have a show.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, it's for TV, sometimes the characters, they don't really have an arc in traditional television. Usually it's more of like a gentle slope that they, sometimes gradually are going to change over the course of the series, but in general they need their flaw and stuff like that to sustain them for the entire show. So if you fixed it, then you would have nowhere to go. So it's just this gentle slope the whole way. Brian asked, in writing the short, there was also rebirth and return. Would those concepts fit into resolution, or was that just for shorts?
Yes. Sorry, Lexi. You can go.
I was going to say, so rebirth and return is language that John really likes. It kind of fits with a lot of,
He's a hero journey guy.
Yeah, he's a hero's journey guy. It's very like Jaws-y, and it does work for feature stuff. It is a good way to think about resolution. Rebirth just basically means that now the protagonist is officially their new person. So they resolve their final fight, and now they're a new person. And return is, in a traditional hero's journey, they've actually ventured out into the world, and now they're literally coming home. You can interpret that more.
So you could
more
say
metaphorically.
You could say, sorry, just to build off this, you could say that in this new version, the rebirth scene actually happens in the end of the final fight.
Yeah, I would say yes.
That's the catastrophic. That's the huge success at the end of the final fight, and the resolution is the return.
Yeah, I would say so. We've been trying. It's some of the language that we use is different than language in. There's just a ton of terms for everything, and we've really done our best to make it as direct as possible. Like, we're trying to avoid a lot of the traditional hero's journey language about the elixir and all that stuff, just because we want it to be as straightforward as possible. So that's we've sort of shifted away from rebirth and return, but I can add in a mention just for,
yeah. So I would,
that's what that is.
Just to reiterate that point, like, we're trying to, there is a lot of confusion out there in the screenwriting world. People have the same names for the same things. And the reason we've picked a lot of the names we have is that they're the most basic, like, general turning points possible. Like in the hero's journey, they have like the meeting the goddess is like the midpoint. Right? Well, okay, but that's like not really, that's kind of language that inserts a bias or like a certain type of, form, and that's why we're trying to, make it as utilitarian and general as possible. So sorry for any changes from writing the short to this.
Yeah, we shall update writing the short one of these days.
Yes, we will. Once we finish this and writing the scene, which we are currently developing, which we're very excited about, we're going to release another free course, for those who don't know, on actual scene writing, hopefully right when this course wraps up. So
it's gonna be the writing the scene course is really cool. I wish that it existed forever ago. So
yeah, me too.
I think you all will. I think you all will like it. There's just a lot of. It would go really well with week 8.
Right. So let's answer some more questions.
Oh, real quick though, I wanted to say so I know that I've been seeing a lot of comments that people like are stuck on a certain week or something like that, and something that I would advise is that if you are between weeks 1 and 7 and you feel stuck, it's okay if you don't know what those beats are. I would recommend just going forward, and then you can wait before you go to draft on week 8. But I would recommend just continuing with the lessons and absorbing the information, even if you don't quite know how to apply it to your own story yet. And the reason for that is that, really, ideally, we would be able to just transfer all of these elements of story information into your brain, and then we work through the different pieces together. But that would be like 7 weeks of not writing. So what we've done is we've suggested that you play with all these beats as you go, but really the beats build on one another. In order to know what your ultimate test is going to be, like, you set things up and things point back to earlier beats because it's all interconnected. So you might have a breakthrough in week 6 that informs your, that tells you need to change a protagonist's flaw, like that you don't exactly know what the flaw is yet. And just things like that. So if you feel stuck, I would really recommend just moving forward through week 7, and then you can take a pause there, and you'll have all the beat information, and then you'll also have a few of the techniques that we have for filling in the gaps that might help as well. Anyway.
Yeah. So, question from Ina. How would you add the line B and other character arcs in the Tentpole? So for the Tentpole document, at least for this class and the first version you do, I really, really, really recommend to not put in other characters' information as much, unless where it affects the protagonist. Like, just focus on the protagonist's growth arc. Now, you can have in your beat sheet, like the expanded, like once you want to go to carding, and once you want the document that helps you before carding, go into that other stuff. But I would really highly recommend getting the core protagonist arc down and internally consistent and strong. You notice that in I don't know if we've released the beat sheet I did, the Tentpole document I did for Lord of the Rings. I didn't include anything about Aragorn wanting to become king or anything. I just went this is Frodo's journey, and this is how we track it in the movie, because it's the core of the movie. You can have your other ancillary colors and elements expanded. Obviously, you have to have that figured out before you draft, but when you're first approaching the Tentpole document, really just go for the protagonist story. Would you agree, Alexi?
Yes, and that actually I'm definitely going to circle back to Annie's question and other people's questions, but I did see that Sean asked a question that really ties into this, which is, that it's these Tentpole documents are really about action and they're a little bit about emotion, but not so much. It's difficult to do this sometimes for a character-driven piece because the whole thing with character-driven pieces is that so much hinges on execution.
Right, but I would say that the Tentpole document you could hypothetically do of Marriage Story, which is
no. I'm not saying it absolutely still works. It's just that, so much of what makes character-driven stories powerful is the execution of it. And so the beats on page might look relatively insignificant. And the thing that I would suggest there is that some advice that John gave me that applies to Tentpole documents is that it is a tool for you, and never, never, never show it to a non-writer.
Yes.
Because they won't get it. Yeah. Like, this is just for you, and we ask to see it because, we understand what this document is, and we want to try to help you make sure all the pieces connect. But beyond that, I really wouldn't show it to a non-writer, because it's not going to make sense to them. They're not going to be able to sort of understand that these are just the tent poles and not the entire thing. So it is definitely true that your tentpole document is not going to have the same amount of emotion, but that's, it's because it's really more a guiding light for you, like guideposts for you. And you probably have other notes in your beat sheet brainstorming or just like in your notebook in general about how each of these beats are going to play out, like the emotionality of each beat. But yeah, for the tentpole document, for character driven stuff, it might look a little like not a lot of sparkle, but that's okay.
Yeah. It's completely okay. I mean, listen, this is a functional tool for you to figure out the story. It's not the script itself. It's okay if it's just sort of looks like a bunch of plot points. It's just, do these plot points make sense, and are they a foundation for you to build off of? Yeah, I'm not expecting to like tear up looking at anyone's tentpole document.
No.
Oh my God, that character arc, it's like any, anyway, let's keep going.
Yeah, it's more just like making sure that, that you have a dramatic flaw that pays off in the end in some meaningful way. It's making sure that you have an inciting incident that really throws them into a new world. It's just making sure that the most bare version of the story is working, and then you're going to add a lot of other layers on top.
So moving on, because there are a lot of questions, I don't want to get caught behind. So Annie says, I was doing research on midpoints today, and they seem so different from movie to movie. Can you guys talk about your favorite examples of movie midpoints, and then what their new world is?
New world.
Their new world is. Yeah, I'm sorry. But I'd love to hear more because I still feel confused and can't point out when that is in every movie yet. So general rule of thumb, midpoints happen within 15 to 20 minutes of the halfway point of the movie.
Which is about page 65.
Yeah, sometimes
if you're being really technical, it's about, it's in that.
Right. And in Parasite, it is literally the halfway point of the movie. Like, general rule of thumb, it happens halfway through the movie. If you feel like the nature of the audience's understanding of what's happening changes, that's the midpoint. Like, it can feel different. It can be like in Inception, oh my God, we're going to die in the dream thing, and we thought we had it under control. I actually think it's a good rule of thumb. And if you're looking at stories, it's the moment the protagonist thought they had control, and then they lose control. Usually, but there's a lot of variety for what a midpoint can be. I think my definition is the audience's understanding, and usually the protagonist's understanding changes fundamentally for the worse. Usually,
yeah.
I think. Sorry.
I was saying so. In my understanding of like the midpoint and everything like that, when you have your inciting incident and then eventually launch into your second act, the protagonist is in a different world for, the first time. They're in their new world. They were taken out of their original world. And then they spend that first half of Act 2, which we've been calling, we've been trying to figure out what to call it, but for now, Act 2A, they spend that time acclimating to this new world, making a plan, setting up the plan, and preparing to go get their objective, usually. And then the midpoint is something where just when they're getting their footing, everything fundamentally changes. The rules of the game shift. It's a moment that completely like rips the rug out from underneath the protagonist, and that can look really, really different in all of your movies. But it's just something that everything the protagonist thought that they finally understood about this new world is thrown on its head at the midpoint.
No, I'm listening. I'm listening.
Oh, one second.
Make sure everybody has mute on.
Yeah.
So a great example is Star Wars, one of the most easy to understand movies structure-wise. The whole first half of Act 2 is, we've got to get to Alderaan. The objective is we have to get the Death Star plans to the Rebel base. We got to get this droid to the Rebel base. They think the Rebel base is in Alderaan. We're going to Alderaan. The midpoint of Star Wars is, oh shit, Alderaan got blown up. That's no moon. The Death Star has sucked us in. Oh my God, we got to get out of here, and we got to get out of here with the plans, or else everything's fucked. Excuse my my language. But fundamentally, it's the rug's pulled out from under them. They lose control.
Yeah, and then in character-driven stuff, or actually, it doesn't have to be character-driven to have a more subtle midpoint. There's movies where it's something like a fight with a best friend who had previously been like their number one ally, and then now they lose that friend. Or it could be a death of a major character. There's a lot of it could range in how massive it looks on the page, but it's massive to your protagonist, and then at that moment they don't know how they're going to move forward, and it's a moment where they recommit to moving forward anyway.
Yes. So Super Pollinator, does the protagonist know their objective after the inciting incident or after the Act 1 break? This is actually from doing my review in the first act, reading a bunch of those scripts. One of the big problems a lot of people had is that the inciting incident wasn't the cause of the objective. I think so many stories are benefited by making the inciting incident the reason the objective comes into being. It is what the inciting incident should ideally disrupt the old world of the protagonist and force them to act. The act is the attainment of the objective, usually. So,
can I?
Yeah.
So, Adam and I have been talking about going back to where we talk about objective and introducing a new idea, which I sort of hinted at when I was teasing Adam earlier, called motivation. And the motivation is really why they want this tangible objective. So I think if we think about it that way, I would argue that the inciting incident must give them the motivation. So they must need something in that moment. And it is possible that the exact tangible objective becomes clear to them at the Act 1 break, but they need to know what they need. The overall thing that they need is revealed at the inciting incident.
Yeah.
Adam, would you say that's true?
That's completely true. Actually, a trick that Pixar uses, and first of all, this doesn't work for every story, but it really, really works well for them, and it's how they get very emotionally deep movies with very simple stories. They have the protagonist's flaw be a grand passion that they love. It's something they love too much. And the inciting incident is when they take that thing they love away. And the arc of the story is that they have to correct their relationship with the thing they love. So in Toy Story, Woody's flaw is that he loves being Andy's favorite toy, no matter what. He loves being number one. He loves the attention. He has an unhealthy relationship with being Andy's favorite toy. The inciting incident, oh my God, there's a new toy in town, and you're number two now. And that causes Woody to lash out and take the low road out, and he tries to get rid of Buzz. And that causes the toy people to kick him out. In The Incredibles, Mr. Incredible's grand passion is he loves being a superhero more than anything. And they take away that he can't be a superhero anymore. The laws have changed. It's illegal to be a superhero. He's got a dead-end job. So he's going to take the low road because he loves it too much, kind of for the wrong reasons, to moonlight as a superhero, and in a way that hurts and disconnects him with his family. And in Finding Nemo, Marlin loves being a dad more than anything. And, well, the inciting incident obviously is, that he loses his family, except for Nemo. And he has an unhealthy protective relationship with his only son. And the inciting incident isn't when he loses the kid. It's when Nemo gets caught and he loses his grand passion. He has to correct his relationship with the thing he loves. So I don't want to add new language here, but what they do is that the flaw, the inciting incident, and the objective are all fundamentally interconnected. You can't do every story this way. Not every story has to start with oh my God, I love being an actuary more than anything, and now I can't be an actuary anymore. You know, no. I'm gonna bring this up because it's so important to understand that the best stories we care about happen because a protagonist wants something that's tied to who they are, and it's tied to what they can't have and what they aren't yet. You know, it's the promise of the story is seeing that change take place, and that's just a really good way they do it.
Agreed. Yeah, Pixar handles that beautifully, but it's also just one approach to dramatic flaw. And I will say that something that we're trying to shift over is we're trying to say dramatic flaw more often rather than just flaw, because you know your character is going to be flawed in probably a lot of ways because they're, you know, a three-dimensional character. So it's not that it's not just a bad quality that they have. It is something that is dramatically making it more difficult for them to achieve their objective. And that can be something that we consider negative. It can also be something that we consider positive. It can be a grand passion like Pixar. It can be anything that, you know, it's the part of them that is going to change over the course of the story, and also the part of them that makes it more difficult for them to get to their objective.
Yes, 100%.
Just tying that in.
So, Kaylin, so not specifically related to Tentpole, but I'm struggling with which pitching helped me realize yesterday is that I've been focusing so hard on raising external stakes that I completely neglected internal stakes, which made developing my flaw really difficult. I didn't know if you guys had any advice how to make sure that's flowing as we're working. I have an opinion on this, and I personally, this is something Michael Arndt talks about. You know,
who does? Just to clarify who that is, real quick.
Yeah, Michael Arndt is the guy who wrote Toy Story 3 and Little Miss Sunshine, and he was a senior story consultant at Pixar for a lot of years. Really good at story. Something he always talks about in how he evaluates stories is you have your external stakes for the story. Oh my God, if we don't push the button, the planet's going to blow up. And the internal stakes of the story. And if he doesn't, you know, push the button and become a hero, you know, he loses his husband or whatever, you know, or his kid or whatever. And then philosophical stakes. The philosophical stakes are what add meaning to the story. That's what, like, it's if you can make all three of these tied together. So, for example, he is pushing the button for personal gain worth it in the end? You know, it's what Lexi likes to call the dramatic question of the story. You know, like in the philosophical stakes of Star Wars are kind of like, you know, trusting mind over machinery, or that's not what it is, but like it's culminated in the moment where he trusts his feelings and turns off the targeting computer.
It's really, really tied because you know the dramatic question is really tied. What Adam's calling the philosophical stakes, or we also Adam, we also call them now the thematic stakes.
Oh, sorry, we're calling them thematic stakes.
yeah, Michael Arndt calls it the philosophical states.
Right, but we're calling it thematic.
Yeah, because we felt that philosophical was a little bit like.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't quite make sense to me what that means, but in terms of
that's the video. Sorry, Brian just shared the video that I think is fantastic. It's what really helped me understand. It's very, very good on third acts. This is an hour and a half. He deconstructs The Graduate, Star Wars, and Little Miss Sunshine. Really, really, really good. It's very consistent with our curriculum. He has the exact same final fight structure. The one thing I disagree with in that video, I just have to preface this, is I think he misevaluates the flaw of some of the characters because he's like, anyway, but that's such a minor nitpick thing. And this sort of goes to show the overall thing is like different screenwriters have different names for different things, but
yeah,
fundamentally.
He does a good job. Yeah. He's good at explaining things.
Yes.
But yeah, so did we answer that question about internal stakes and external stakes? I think so. So just sort of top down thing, external stakes are like physically, are they going to get hurt? Are they going to lose something? Like, are they going to lose a lot of money? I don't know. Just anything that's external to them, more like physical. Internal stakes are more emotional. Like, are you going to lose this relationship, or this is making me sad, or, just anything like that. And then the thing that we've added, the thematic stakes, is really tied, because of the nature of theme, to their inner need and the dramatic question. So, are they in jeopardy of unknowingly pushing themselves further away from their inner need?
Yes.
Is kind of how I imagine that one. All right. So.
Oh, why the term tentpole?
So.
Yeah, Alexi.
Well, you can do it.
Oh, I can do it. Yeah, I'd love to do it. So. It's this is a term that's been floating around, but basically it means the tentpole beats are the big beats of the story, and the reason why it's called a tentpole is you have a giant tent. These are the poles that hold the tent up. The tent's your story. This is what's holding the story together, and this, like, from moment to moment, this is the spine of the story. But
I kind of
a spine document doesn't sound as good,
Yeah, it's kind of ugly. Yeah, I honestly visualize it when I think about tentpole beats. I think about if you're trying to, hang up those fairy lights in your dorm room. You know how you need a bunch of anchor points to hold it up?
Right.
But there's still stuff connecting it. I think of all those different anchor points as the tent poles that is holding up your little sparkly lights. And then I like that because then the strand is one line. But, twinkly light pole or twinkly light beats, I think, would be even more confusing. So it's basically just like the anchors. It's the thing that holds the story up, and then everything else is just working in between those.
Yes.
Cool.
Great stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Mainframe. Let's see. Screenwriting. Oh, yeah. Cheryl did a nice explanation of what the Tentpole guide is here. If you all didn't get a chance to see it,
great.
I can read it real quick just in case people aren't flipping back and forth. But screenwriting is a creative endeavor. The Tentpole beat sheet is a guide. You're painting a picture with words. You would also have guidelines if you were learning to paint a picture with paints and a brush. The finished products are a combination of the guidelines and your resulting creativity. The end result is a story or a painting that moves your audience. Yes to that. Agreed. Let's see. On the Tentpole document, it says false mentor, but there is no mentor space. Is it? Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, that is a typo. I need to fix that. It can be a mentor or a false mentor. I will fix it and re-upload it.
Great. Okay, so
you know what I was? Yeah, never mind. Go ahead. I was just saying, I realized that I was looking at my Jojo Rabbit Tentpole as a reference, and that's why it's false mentor. Go ahead.
Okay, right. So what if your story is telling you to tell it in another structure, like changing the objective in the middle? Should we experiment on the rewrite after finishing the course? So regarding that specific choice, the reason why John hates having the objective change in the middle. And first of all, there are some movies that are great that do this. It's not like, oh my God, this is going to make your movie horrible. It's just, it is so easy for your movie for your second act to fall apart if you do this. I've seen a lot of not bad screenplays, but a lot of screenplays that like lose their energy at the halfway point because we feel as a reader or an audience, oh, the protagonist got what they wanted, or oh, they now want something else. Like, well, it's a challenge, and I'm not saying it's huge. Therefore, you should never try to find a solution that works. Like, I think in Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, his objective changes at the midpoint. It totally does. There's no other way to interpret it, and like I need to rewatch it. But when I watched it last, I was like, oh my God. He goes from wanting to erase her memories to, oh my God, I want to keep these memories. It's a reversal. So it can work. It's just, but regarding your overall question, this is just one way to tell a story. there are other ways. I will say, you know, sometimes if your story is telling you to do something else, that doesn't necessarily mean you've made the right choices in the beginning. Like, think about it this way. I don't want to use a music metaphor, but like, like the choice to have traditional song structure with like having a chorus and then a bridge, you know, and like song structure, sort of like when you follow it or when you hear it, there's something sort of a magical zone of like, wow, if you follow the rules, that's a pop song. If you follow the rules for this, that's a movie. Sometimes if you break the rules, you can sort of, the goal of what you're doing can get kind of finicky. I mean, Lexi, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that there's going to be exceptions to everything we say, and there's probably going to be an exception that that does it well. But it's if this is your first screenplay, I would probably recommend trying as best you can to stick to these beats. And if you wanted to try to do something else, then I guess like your suggestion of trying to do it on the second draft, like in rewriting and reading it in the writing it traditionally, and then reading it and seeing if it really doesn't work and if you really need that shift. But then on the objective, changing at the midpoint specifically, often if that happens, it's tied to motivation, which, you know, we mentioned a little bit before. We're going to add another video to the course on motivation. But basically in movies where the objective changes at the midpoint, a lot of times it's something that like the protagonist thought that they needed to go, thought that they needed something easier. They needed to accomplish something easier. Like they needed to, this is a terrible example, but they needed to push this button on Earth to stop everything from exploding. And then at the midpoint, they realize the button is now on the, like, or whatever, like it's now on the moon. Like they have to get to the moon to fix it. It's something where the reason for it, the motivation for it, the outcome of it is the same, but the way to accomplish it has been changed significantly. So an example that Adam's going to judge me, Winter's Bone, you know, the midpoint, she finds out that her dad's dead. So up before that, her objective was just, you know, finding her dad and bringing him back and all that. Now it's to prove he's dead, technically, but it's still serving the same purpose.
Yeah, that's definitely it. What's the difference between a beat sheet and a Tentpole? Tentpole document is just the big things that happen to your protagonist, the important big things, and the beat sheet is what is pretty much everything in your story that's going to get to carding. Right, Alexi?
Yes, yeah. So the Tentpole is, so whereas before we mentioned that the Tentpole is really about the protagonist's action and it's not as emotional, your beat sheet might have more of that emotionality in there. Again, though, it's not the final product, so you're probably not gonna bring Adam to tears with your beat sheet. But the beat sheet is really it's, you know, if the Tentpole document is a Tentpoles and this is like the tarp on top is the beat sheet. And then you make that into the whole tent. It's just the parts that string everything together. And again, we're using the beat sheet as a brainstorming document, so we're approaching it slightly different. But some people use the beat sheet more firmly as their written outline, which is a valid way to do it. But we like using it to brainstorm and then doing the outline with cards.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me.
Okay.
But then again, we're drinking the same Kool-Aid, so yeah.
Very true.
Maybe we're both equally confused, you know?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Okay, so let me go for another question. Sorry, I lost my place.
I did too. My term Tentpole. different structure.
I'd love to hear your take on A Knight's Tale. I think they were intentionally playing with characters and structures in strong, interesting ways while staying very commercial. I have not seen A Knight's Tale since I was 12, so I'll have to get back to you on that, Damon. Alexi, do you remember A Knight's Tale?
I don't know what that is. What is that?
Oh, are you the Heath Ledger movie about the guy who gets who like becomes a knight? It's great. I remember it being great.
Is it like the Amy Adams, whatever?
No.
Where she is a fantasy person, where she climbs through the sewer and now she's in the real world, but she was a cartoon princess, like that.
No, it's no.
Not the same.
No, it's there's no like. It's about a young squire who becomes a knight, and it's funny. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm mixing it up with something else.
We'll check it out. How about that?
Charlie Kaufman makes his own rules. I'm Thinking of Ending Things last night. Structure was very different. I have not seen I'm Thinking of Ending Things last night, but I know. First of all, I'm a huge Charlie Kaufman fan. The movies I know really well, being John Malkovich, Adaptation, and Eternal Sunshine, are pretty conventional 3-act structure films. Except Adaptation is a parody of a 3-act structure film that's a meta commentary on writing a 3-act structure film. Like, the whole idea is that he doesn't know how to write a 3rd act until he talks to Robert McKee, and Robert McKee says, wow, I'm in the end, and also his brother's ideas of like, who's a hack screenwriter. It's like, you gotta have a car chase and the horses and whatever, and drug bust, and then that's what ends up happening in the movie. I think it's a brilliant, funny lampoon of screenplay conventions and, bad writing. But being John Malkovich, I think, is really conventional. Everything about it is unconventional. It's about a puppeteer and his pet shop owner wife fall in love with the same woman while discovering a portal into John Malkovich's subconscious and exploiting it. It's great. I think it's wonderful. I think the only thing about Eternal Sunshine is the objective changes halfway through.
I've debated sharing this line that John says in class, because it's a little harsh, but he does say it, so I'm not taking credit for it. But every year, and like even when I had him as a freshman, there's always some people who really just don't, who are like, everything is like, but Tarantino does this. And then John's response is, are you Tarantino? Which is a little harsh, but I think the point is sort of, I think, just that, there's always going to be people who break the rules, and it can even work really, really well for them. And sort of a know it before you break it kind of a thing, so that you know why you're breaking it to serve story better. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a new world in the Tentpole for Inception. At least the one I shared just now.
Let's see. I think there is.
It's new world. Yep, right there. Yeah, getting the crew together, her training, we learn the new rules of the world. All of that stuff.
Yeah. Sorry if that was a downer.
Oh, new world. Oh, yeah, there's a new world. The new world is the job. The whole the new world is we're preparing for the job. The new world is they're actually doing the job.
Oh, I thought the new world, because like at the midpoint the rules changed.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Now the new world is that now that they're already in it, now their understanding is ripped out from underneath them, and if they die,
it's very conventional.
If they die, they'll be stuck there.
I actually would argue that Inception is the most by the books formulaic film we've done in copy class.
Maybe our Tentpole document didn't have it. Did it not?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not trying to be like, oh, you were wrong. I'm just saying, I don't know what I was looking at. And also conceptually, because, these are just sort of, these Tentpole document examples are just like things I made in 20 minutes, from memory, I'm missing, I'm not perfect.
Maybe the one that I shared.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it wasn't Adam that was wrong.
Sorry, guys. I can't change when Alexi changes things.
You know, I do my very best. I will update that and send it along.
All right. Is there any questions? Do you guys do character sheets before heading out to writing the script? By character sheets, do you mean like bios for the characters? Because I don't.
I don't do like explicit character sheets. Like I don't have something that I fill out every single time, but I do try to think about like, you know how like if you're trying to do a different accent, you might have a line that gets you into that accent.
Right, right.
I think about that with my characters. Like, what is something that they would say that is so iconically them that I remember who they are? I try to think about something like that.
Something I do. This isn't a character sheet. I actually think it's more useful. Sorry, I'm really arrogant. I know. I'm sorry. I write a monologue in the voice of every main character before I start writing, so I get the sense of voice. I just like a page-long monologue of just in their voice of them talking, and so you get the sense of the cadence of how they speak. So you have an understanding of. I think it's more useful because at the end of the day, I'm in the Aaron Sorkin camp of character bios, and that I don't think characters exist when they're off screen. Like a character exists in the work, and they don't exist outside of the work. Like they are integrated with the script. That's my worldview. I know a lot of people who are wonderful writers who really disagree, and they like think about their characters and the world, what they were doing when they were 12 years old, and they have all that information.
I do that.
Yeah, Alexi does that. I'm more of like, okay, they're real when the drama happens. And what matters is how they speak and how they interact with the characters. Because at the end of the day, while I'm doing a monologue, characters are about the interaction with other characters. Characters are about the conflict. The expression of character is who they are in your story and how they interact and conflict with the world. That's how I think of it. That's just my point of view. Alexi world builds and does all her preparation and really thinks about things. I wing it.
I really, really like world building. So I will just, if I think of something that really just rings true to me about a specific character, I'll write it down so that I understand where they're coming from. And I actually want to do a video essay on it. I was mentioning it to Adam about the broader world of your story.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, that's Damon says he lost my voice.
He misses you.
All right, there we go.
But let's see. Oh yeah, I think of it as like that. There's this that when you write a script, you're also building this entire world that exists around it, and your script just looks at one small piece of it. Like if you have a big map and you drew a circle around one part of that map, that's your script, but you created the whole map. So you can imply things that have, like, things as the writer that are happening outside of that circle. Things about the broader world, and you can allude to things in the broader world, but only so much of it makes it onto the page. And that's kind of how I think about it. I don't know if that helps.
I think there are many, many wonderful writers who take that approach. And I think people who have had experience in playwriting are more in my camp. And that's something that I've had a lot of, I had a lot of growth when I wrote for theater and when I directed theater, and I started realizing, my writing and notes they're just a vehicle for an actor to interpret this document. And that for me was what made me go from being kind of like, I don't know what's going on, to I feel good about what I'm doing. So yeah, just different approach.
Yeah, totally. And I've never written for theater, so maybe that's part of my thing.
Yeah, do we have any other questions? Oh, Kaylin says, I wonder if character bios are not as important in a feature versus for TV. That's something I completely can understand, because but here's the thing, you're not even doing a character bio, you're doing like a whole series Bible.
Yeah.
Series Bible. You know, like that's just a lot more information about where the character's going and who they are and what they're going to do. And because television is fundamentally not about ideas, it's about character relationships in ideas. You know, you gotta have that stuff figured out. It's got to really work.
Yeah, it's much more about relationships. So you need to know what pieces you're working with. And like, you know, it's not going to have the same exact arc as a feature. And instead, sort of your guiding points are these relationships.
Right.
So.
That being said, you know, I've sold feature screenplays. I have not sold pilots. So, you know, don't listen to me. I'm not qualified to give television writing advice. I know people who are really into that, and that's what they say.
That what?
Oh, it's all about relationships. It's all about, you know, you do bios, you do that stuff. You know, really think about it.
Yeah, the pilot that I just finished that hopefully will be announced soon.
Sean has a story circle question. This is something I don't do, so Alexi can.
So I struggled with the story circle that things weren't lining up opposite. I found that I was having points happen 45 minutes later, as in 3/4 of the circle. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not going to always work. It's not something that's like a hard rule. It works a lot. And it also reminds you that things need to be set up.
Yes.
And it makes you think more about causality. It makes you think more about setting stuff up with enough time. And it also helps you sometimes figure out things that can go in between, because it's not a hard and fast rule, and it's not always gonna work, but it works a surprising amount. So if you map out your whole story on the story circle and it's not lining up, that doesn't mean that your story's wrong.
Right.
But if you map out your story and then you're trying to figure out what goes in between things, consider the opposite side of the circle. Like, you know, if you map it out and it doesn't line up, consider what it would do if you did make it line up. And then it's up to you to decide if that's better or not. You know, it's just another way to sort of check your work and keep you thinking about being intentional with every single decision that you make.
Yes.
So
that is the most important thing.
So it's like a lot of times these exercises might not give you a new answer, but it makes you be much more intentional about the choices that you did make. And that's just as important. Yeah. Let's see. Will the TV course be after writing the feature? That is the hope. That we're going to probably take a breather and get this writing the scene out and polish this writing the feature. And there's definitely we also want to do stuff about business of it.
And also I want us to develop the YouTube channel a little bit more. We want to possibly, you know, get more content out there, like possibly free video essays on certain films and subjects. There's a lot of stuff we want to be doing. And the podcast.
Yes, the podcast
which
is
will
happening
happen
soon.
John wants to do it. We just need to get him down, and we need to organize it and all that
he
stuff.
has started NYU classes, and they're all online for the first time ever. And he's
drained. It's a lot of Zoom. It's a lot of Zoom.
It is a lot of Zoom.
You guys have to imagine he's got some classes with he's got that freshman class with like 100 people.
So yeah, sophomore class. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds horrible. God.
It's terrible. Yeah, you basically break movies and then have to explain. He has to explain the same things over and over. It's just really draining, and it's and he has to read a ton of scripts. So he's very, very busy. So we want to give him a little bit more room to settle into this new semester and find his own rhythm.
But aside from that, there are things we want to do, without John, like video essays and, improving the course and, just promoting. And, we got to get John out there in the world, doing stuff, all of us, Anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, also we want to do more workshops with this. This, it's just, at the end of the day, we're a small team and we want to give you all the best we can give and so we need to kind of base it out a bit. But yes, we do anticipate the what is it? The pilot course, like writing the pilot or writing the series Bible or however we approach it, writing for TV, will be the next core course that we do.
Yes.
Thank you all for your very nice words.
Does anybody have any final questions? I mean, unless...
Oh, and Sean, yes, we are considering putting Coffee Class as a podcast.
Yes.
I've been trying to shift it so that I read all the comments out loud and do things like that. That is a hope, is that we put the Coffee Class as a podcast and then also do other podcasts where they're shorter and they let us just kind of get into, like, zoom in on some topics and explore them more in depth. You know, I'm trying to think, like, an example. Like, we were thinking about doing something on cliche and how to use cliche and how not to use cliche and things like that.
Yeah, my opinion on cliche, because I cannot shut up, is you know, I think the most important thing to be aware of when dealing with cliche is to be aware of it. You know, if things are arbitrarily cliche in your story, the moment things are cliche is when your audience is ahead of you, and that's never good. But here's the thing about cliche: cliches work because they're true. You know, like, if something has been done 10,000 times, there's a reason it's been done 10,000 times. To use cliche, if you have it with awareness and then make the things around it not cliche, it can make, you know, your story functional and, you know, appealing at the same time. It's just, the thing is, be aware of it. And yeah, that's my take. Unprompted.
But if you all have something that you'd like us to go into in the podcast, we are open to hearing it, and we made a little podcast channel in the same as the Coffee Class, it's in the same section as the Coffee Class channel. Just drop in there if there's something you'd like us to zoom in on. We want to do it really soon, and we should be out of the most intense production for writing the feature in 2 weeks. So,
100%.
yeah,
I'm excited about writing the scene. I think you guys are all gonna really really enjoy it. The way I'm thinking of it is, we're going to try and make it kind of like an Elements of Style, like the Strunk and White book. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Like, for prose writing, not just prose writing, for like writing in general, we want to like sort of give like our screenplay version of that, you know, like do's and don'ts, you know, how to fix basic problems, because so much, it's the one thing that's really not taught in books.
Yeah, it's weird because, like, you'd think that this information should be everywhere since it's, you know, writing, but there's not a lot of concise information about how to actually write scenes. And
Yes.
so if you've gotten to the drafting part of our feature course, we don't go into the weeds because all of that is in this writing the scene course. Like, we're going to talk about how to handle action scenes or montage or, you know, voiceover. We're going to talk about all those sorts of things in addition to, like, creatively and writing it on the page. So John does want to write a young screenwriter's book, Kaylin, but he's also so overwhelmed, but he talks about it a lot. So we'll see if that was like one of his...
It's something we've talked about for sure.
Yeah. Trying to shift it so that it's, you know, the most concise version, because that's really our goal, is that we don't want to do like a masterclass where it's just hours of stuff that is more theory. We really want...
Sorry, Kim just shared.
Wait, that exists?
I didn't know that existed. Oh, wait, is it good? Kim, is this good?
Oh, she said it never answers her questions.
Oh. Well, you know, actually, I can understand how a lot of these, like, so what we're going to do in the course is, like, I first of all, I'm going to go through, like, I'm going to write a really bad scene, and then I'm going to fix that scene and give examples of, like, hey, this is, like, you know, non-active verbs, and this is me rephrasing things to make it, and also, like, okay, what's an alternative to camera angles? Like, how do you focus in on a moment that implies a close-up without writing close on? And just sort of all of, like, those little ideas.
Brian. You can borrow one of my scenes.
No, I've got a fictional movie I'm going to make all the scenes for. That I think you guys will get a kick out of.
It's gonna be fun.
Fictional meaning I haven't written it, but I'm going to write, and I will never finish this, but because it's a terrible idea, but it's going to be funny.
Is it terrible? I think it's great.
Okay, yeah. Avi will hate it.
Avi will be completely.
He was the inspiration. He was the inspiration. I was rewatching Train to Busan.
Oh man, yeah. I'm the worst at making up example scenes, if you all noticed, and where I was trying to show what John was saying. Anyway, let's see. So yeah, so that will be. I guess the other thing with writing the scene is that there is no official way, like there is no like Chicago style rule book for writing screenplays because at the end of the day, it's not the final product. It's a blueprint. It's a guide for other people to make a movie with, or you, if you also want to do that. But you know, it's not the final product. So there's not hard and fast rules. That said, there are standards where people have done similar, where people have done something one way a lot, and now it's what people have come to expect, and they're a little bit thrown.
Yes.
If it's not like that. So.
I actually, I mean, as somebody who, is a screenwriter, this might be a little blasphemous to say, but I don't think screenplays in and of themselves are art. I think it's 1/3 of art. I think storytelling is art. I think movies are art. I think it's 1/3 of the process. 1/3 of it is the screenplay. Another third is the shooting and the directing, and the last third is the editing and the music.
Yeah.
And everything together. Like so much, it's not an end product of itself. A screenplay. People don't read screenplays for fun typically, unless you're a screenwriter. And even then, like reading one of my friend's screenplays is 99% of the time a chore. Yeah. It's all like, oh god, I gotta read his screenplay. All right, and it's not something I look forward to. I read, fiction and books, and I'll watch movies for fun. Like that's art. That's the experience.
Yeah, but we're just part of. Our role is just one piece of it, and the way I've heard that explained too is that there's the story you write, there's the story you shoot, and there's the story you edit. Right? That's kind of how it goes.
Yes.
So we're just essentially what you're writing is a guide, and it's a super, super, super important guide, but it's just a guide. So let's see. We have some questions.
If either of you wanted to direct, obviously I'm directing theaters. What about movies? I mean, yeah, that's great. I mean, it's I love working with actors. Actually, I'm really enjoy that part of the process of it. I thought
you were going to say I'm really good at it, which is very on brand.
So much of being a director, at least for theater, is being dad or being mom, having mom energy, holding space for people to interpret something and have moments, and then like being an audience and sort of being like, hey, try it this way. Have you thought about it like this? What's your motivation? Like that sort of stuff. I love that stuff. I would say technically, I am not a cinematographer. I'm not one of those like Stanley Kubrick guys. So, but yeah, who wouldn't want to direct? I think Alexi has a thing she wants to direct, right?
Well, I don't. So here's the thing. I am definitely an introvert, and I get so drained being with people. So I learned early, like I went to NYU thinking like I want to do absolutely everything. I want to do all parts of the movie, and I want to direct, and I want to do this. And then I got on some sets, and I was like, I don't want to be here in like that kind of a capacity. Like I don't necessarily like. I would like to walk into a set where they're shooting my work and be like, oh wow, that's so cool. But it's overwhelming for me to be around like completely in that for so long, which I mean, it just is overwhelming. It is a lot directing, and you have to really, really want to do it to be down to do the 12-hour days for however long you shoot stuff for. That said, there have been, like, I've written a short that I would be interested in directing and then possibly doing the feature, but that's because it's something that's really like a deeply personal
Well,
thing.
Lexi, when the pandemic's over, let's do that short, and we'll do it. It'll be fun.
Sweet. Oh yeah, we gotta shoot your. I will come on set for you, Adam. For yours.
Amazing. Yeah, I have a short film I really want to direct, but can't do it. It's not a pandemic thing.
Are you an extrovert, Adam?
Actually, I would say I'm an introvert. I'm both. I'm one of those people who I don't get energy from other people, but I enjoy part of, like, I need to when I really need to get energy, I need to be alone. But I do enjoy hearing the sound of my own voice.
After I finish coffee class, I have to go by myself in a room for like an hour because I'm just drained. But anyway, getting into the personal, let's see.
Screenplay credits. Why is it unusual to see screenwriter credits at the end of the movie?
Usually they're at the front of the movie.
Yeah, some movies, it depends on where the credits, because sometimes title sequence are at the end right now for everything. I think, honestly, just, this is not really answering your question, but screenwriters are like the least respected collaborators in the process. Nobody, like, they need screenwriters, but people don't respect them. It's like Charlie Kaufman has an amazing joke about it in the film adaptation, where he has himself visiting the set of Being John Malkovich in the movie, and nobody knows who he is and nobody wants to talk to him. Like, Catherine Keener looks at him and is like, "Oh, hi, what's up? Yeah, whatever."
We're about to go into rehearsals for something that I'm working on that I really hope I can tell you all about soon. And they're like,
cool.
Yeah, and they're like, "Do you want to come to the rehearsals?" And I'm like, "Do they want me? Like, is that where they want the writer to be? Like, I would love to watch." But
just a side note for Annie's thing is, this isn't true for TV writers. It's totally true in movies. Yeah, 100%.
Yes.
In television,
yes.
TVs are king. We're only talking about movies.
I've heard that in TV or in movies, director is king. In TV, showrunner is king. Not really the writers for TV though, because it's like, it's the room. It's really the showrunner, I guess. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, it's the showrunner. But the writers are like still hierarchically more respected than directors.
Yes, that. Let's see.
Carrie, I feel like every department feels that way. Yeah. Oh my god. Can I talk about the David Mamet book for a minute?
Do it.
Yeah. So I have very complicated feelings about David Mamet's on directing film book and David Mamet in general. First of all, he's a brilliant writer, really good. Or I should say, he wrote one good play. Sorry, shots fired. He wrote one good play and has been coasting his entire career off of it. But that book originated as a lecture he gave in the 80s at Columbia after he had directed one movie, or I think two movies. And it's really interesting. First of all, I really recommend it to people. It's a really interesting book. Apparently, it's terrible directing advice, but it's great writing advice. So he's like directing films from a writer's perspective, in that every shot should have a motivation that's tied to like the character in a very grounded way. And while that in theory is very true, his interpretation of that is so extreme in the book that like no directors I like do that. They take more abstract interpretations of shots and like lighting choices. Like his idea is like, unless it is absolute. This is my interpretation of the book when I read it 4 years ago. A very interesting book. I highly recommend it. He does this great exercise where he breaks down a shot list for a story for a pig farmer who has to get rid of a pig or something. And it's really interesting. I really recommend it. Also, you can read it in an afternoon.
Yeah, I'm not as directy. So I would say though that if you want to direct, you should take an acting class. That was the one thing that NYU did that really made me appreciate actors and directors more. If you want to direct, take an acting class where someone's going to be directing you, so that you understand what it's like to be on the other end. It sounds like something people would say, like, oh, this is a nice thing to do. I would say it's a necessary thing to do.
Yes.
So just even if you hate acting, even if you are not ever going to act in your life, it's important to understand what it's like to be on the other side.
Yeah. First of all, I'm not an actor at all. Please, God, never think of me as an actor. But I love and admire actors. But when I was writing at UCB, I was on a sketch comedy team for a while at the Mod shows. That's a weekly sketch comedy show they used to do, or not weekly, monthly sketch comedy show they used to do. And we used to improvise, to work together and workshop ideas. And I took improv classes there. And that for me was such a realization. It helped my writing ever since. I highly recommend everybody who's a writer or a director taking acting classes, because you fundamentally realize the actor knows the script. Hypothetically, what a great actor does is that they are interpreters of the script.
Yeah. And it's always incredible to me to watch them do that, because I write something and I'm like, oh, you said that better than I was imagining it in my head. I don't know. Actors are cool. I appreciate them very much. And that's a required thing that they make you do at NYU, which I would have never done because I do not plan to act. But it was a required thing because directors kept being douches to actors. And so a while ago, they actually added it as a requirement. Oh, Kaylin said, would you ever do a class or podcast on directing?
Possibly. Sorry, you, Lexi, go.
I was going to say maybe from the perspective of being a writer-director.
Yes. Because, at the end of the day, neither of us have really, that's not what we do fundamentally, so I personally like to speak from what I have authority in,
And
maybe
John,
if we could, John has directed.
He has directed, but he is more writer and he is also more producer. So.
Also, he doesn't like what he directed.
Yeah.
He said oh, I didn't do a good job.
I don't think he would feel as comfortable. We might be able to bring in other people though. Well, 100%. It's something that we will definitely keep in mind because we really want to use the podcast to have guests.
Yes.
So a lot of John's little friends, we're going to try to pull on there because he has access to a lot of people, as you might have gathered from his anecdotes. So maybe we'll get Spike Lee. Yeah, because he's at NYU. So Spike
I don't
Lee's
think John and him are close though, right?
Probably not, but he is at NYU, so we have a better chance than.
That's right. They're down the hall. They're down the hall from each other.
Indeed, they are. I would love to get him. I would love to get all my celebrity crushes to come on. There we go. Yeah. We'll invite Brie Larson. J-Law, yes.
Oh, this is a great one. Damon says, it might be helpful to understand the nitty-gritty of how a producer breaks down a script for budget to distinguish.
Yes.
So that would be a line producer. Yeah, I've seen that done. That's really good. That's really useful. There's a whole process.
So something that was mentioned was that it would be probably that we might set up a channel in here where you all can go in with voice and break down your tentpoles together and talk about them and workshop them together. Is that something that would be interesting to you? And if it would be helpful, I could facilitate the groups. I think I did send out something a while ago for writing groups, so I can resend that link in case you haven't got a chance to submit it. And then I can try to match you up with people based on time zone and genre and what you're comfortable with. Because in that form, it says is there anything that you don't want to be workshopping, which could just be personal taste, that you just don't want to workshop whatever. But it could also be that I don't feel like I have the authority to comment fully on a horror, So want to make sure that everyone's as comfortable as possible. But I'll go ahead and I'll resend that thing and then break people up into little groups. If that's helpful. Cool. We're seeing some yeses.
Cool. Well, is there anything else anybody wants to say? Last few minutes.
Thanks for coming out on a Saturday. Damon says, I'd be interested. Is it structured? I think that we could do it both. We could do, honestly, we're open to making this as helpful as possible. I don't want to like make people feel locked in, so that's why I've been sort of hesitant to be like making it too structured. We've been trying to figure out the right balance for that, because we don't want anyone to feel locked in, but we also want to have a structure so that people, you know, I like structure. It makes things make more sense. Let's see. Yes, and Brian already set up the channel for us. So if you all just like want to pop in there and work with each other, you can do that anytime. And now you all now I feel like we all know each other more, so maybe it won't be as scary.
Yeah.
We all need to get on the voice chat more and just have conversations. Let's see. I'd be worried to give feedback since this is my first feature screenplay. Oh, in terms of giving feedback, I think that one of the strongest ways to give feedback, especially if you're more nervous about, like, I don't exactly know, like I don't know if I have the authority to give feedback. Think of it less as feedback and more as asking questions. Like, you know, like, so and that's just something I would recommend in general, if you can, for giving feedback, is just being like, so like John would be like, so what is the objective? And like, why does it matter? And, you know, just like asking questions to sort of, for clarity and for pulling out the core of their story, and just asking, like, and you just asking like, wait, what happened here? Or like, did this thing, like, did you set, like, where did this come from? Or what did that mean? It also helps the writer understand what parts are unclear.
Yes.
And you also all are familiar with the Tentpole document. Yes, Pooja, discovery instead of critique. Exactly. You also are all familiar with the Tentpole document, and you understand the limits of it, to like where it's not exactly going to completely, it's not going to have your entire script on it. I don't know, it could be helpful to pitch to each other like what we did yesterday. I don't know.
I mean, you know, it's as long as you feel like you're getting useful information, you know, I think people should do it. You know, there's absolutely nothing to be lost by sharing your story and getting like a read from other people. At the end of the day, what we're doing here is innate to all people. You know, you're telling a story and you either like responded to it or you don't. That's information that's valuable to somebody. I actually think it's so valuable to pitch to non-screenwriters, because they're the ultimate test. They're the ultimate test, you know. I mean, but that's kind of what it is. You know, you have to think like, you're telling a story. Is it interesting? Did somebody's eyes light up?
Yeah.
If and then that happened, you're in the right zone. Yeah.
The other thing too is, what was the other thing? I just lost it.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I don't think you did. I don't remember anymore. I'll think about it. It was something that was not particularly important, but it was relevant. Let's see. Could be helpful to see how others are breaking their story. Yeah. Honestly, one of the most helpful things for your own scripts, for your own writing, is seeing what other people are doing and having to think, like having to help them think about the elements of story and if it's working. Oh, the thing I was going to say is that questions are always helpful, because even if like the writer has it exactly right or something, they have to make that choice intentional. Again, they have to think about why they made that choice, and that might draw something out for them. So honestly, just asking questions is so helpful. And also it shows writers what people are interested in. Like if someone is really, really hooked by your world and wants to know more about it, then, you know, that gives you some information about what's appealing about your story. Let's see. Does that make any sense?
Makes sense to me, man.
Well, we're vibing though, so.
Yeah, well, yeah. Speak for yourself.
Oh God. I'm trying to think. I felt like we had something else.
I encourage people to discuss with each other and share your ideas because it's just more information. And I think just to reiterate one point, you know, whenever you're sharing an idea or a story, if somebody doesn't like it, you know, they're almost always wrong about how to fix the thing they didn't like. But they're almost always right that there was something that didn't work for them. So if somebody didn't really respond to your pitch and they raise up, well, what about this? Don't necessarily think about, oh, what they're saying. I mean, unless it's really valid, it makes sense. What really matters is it didn't work for them. That's interesting. How do I shift it to work? Like what did not work about the experience that I pitched? At the end of the day, great pitches work really well on lots of people.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing about feedback is that I think you all are going to give better feedback to each other because it's going to be more question based and more about discovery and stuff like that. But you know, as I told the people going into pitch week, John's favorite way to give notes sometimes is to say, all right, here's the bad version. And then he tries to fix a problem that is in your script by pitching a, like, quote unquote, the bad version, the bad solution. And then half the time he talks himself into it being a good solution. But that's that's something else. But a lot of times what happens is you're the writer. Like, you're ultimately going to be the one to find the right way to handle the story. But people are usually right that there's something that's not quite lining up, even if their solution is completely wrong. So if people are doing stuff like what John does, like here's the bad version, you can consider their fix, but really try to think more about what are they trying to fix in the first place. Yeah, and everyone here is super, super nice. So I think if you shared your stuff, people would be great. And people's feedback here is really helpful. Oh, by the way, I wanted to mention that if you want to be on Pitch Week, if you want to do that, we're going to try to do them more regularly. And I can repost the application for that. Basically, you share your Tentpole document and I'll go through it. And if you're good to go, then I'll add you to our internal list. And then if there's something that needs to be updated or fixed, I will let you know. So it won't just be sending off your Tentpole into the abyss. But yeah, I would highly recommend you try it. I hope our brave people who who did it yesterday eased some fears about pitching and showed that it's not super terrifying.
All right, last question. Do we have a last question?
And then also, as always, you know, if you come up with a question later, we're always on. So just post it. And we're doing another workshop this coming Tuesday at 10 a.m. sort of to hit different time zones. But I mean, it's going to be sort of a similar layout. So if you come up with another question, then you could always pop in there if you really want.
Just, I think this is a good one. Damon, are you going to make a Writing the Feature alumni community? So we want to keep the Discord going. We're keeping the YouTube going. And, you know, like this is at the end of the day, less about, us being teachers and you being students, but like us being resources for a community of writers. That's the way we see this Discord. You know, we want you guys to continue to grow and use us as a resource for even if you're not taking one of our courses actively. And that's why we're focusing so much on, you know, great free content and the YouTube channel. That's what matters. The course is a means to enabling us to do that sustainably and getting John to, you know, be interested.
Yeah, the course is how we keep John around. But yeah, our main thing is that we really just want this to be a community of writers, and sometimes we put together resources that consolidate stuff that we've learned or we've gathered or that John's learned, John's gathered, you know. So this should be a constant. And then, you know, once we get out of beta, there's going to be some new writers coming in, and then you all can be the cool guys showing them, answering their questions. So.
Oh yeah, you guys will be senpais.
Yeah, and you all will have the fancy purple titles for your names, which identifies you as special. So.
All right, I've got to go. So lovely chatting with all of you. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks. Glad you all were able to make it.
Thanks a lot.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.